For more inputs on this story, we are now being joined by our correspondent Jagriti Dave live from Washington, D.C. Hi, Jagriti. Thank you for joining us. Now, this is unprecedented. The total U.S. government's debt is now nearing a record $25 trillion, with the current fiscal year's deficit running at almost $744 billion. So is the Trump administration, which heavily relies on good numbers, worried?
Look, it's not the situation that any government wants to find itself in, borrowing record sums over a period of around 3 months, which compared to what they borrowed over 12 months last year, which is $1.28 trillion. I mean, the numbers are just extraordinary, and no government wants to find themselves in this situation. And yes, President Trump was very much banking on the economy as one of the key selling points for his re-election come November. And that is clearly an issue that is at the forefront of his mind when he's thinking about reopening the economy. But most experts and economists will say, whilst the figures, the sums that are being borrowed that the Treasury is talking about are unprecedented, so is the scale of the crisis.
Right. Now, as you already mentioned, this is the election year, and now President Trump has plenty of hurdles, be it the pandemic, which has affected the U.S. in the most potent way, or a flailing economy, unemployment. So what is going to be his strategy to appease Americans now?
One of the key strategies seems to be the positioning against China. The blaming and the attacks on China have been increasing over the last few weeks. That some see as a strategy to divert attention away from his own administration's handling of the pandemic. The recovery, the speed, the toughness, these are sort of language that he's using about bringing America back to the way it was before, even better. That is the sort of a strategy that he will also employ to show that he took action quickly, according to himself and his administration, and he's now taking action quickly to bring the economy back, and that he's thinking of American people and American businesses. That is clearly what is behind his support of those protesters across the country who are protesting against the stay-at-home orders issued by governors. But it's a careful balance that he has to play, because obviously there have been polls that show that people are more concerned about the country reopening too quickly than they are about the economic impact of the stay-at-home orders. So he has to play a balance. How is it going to play out in the eyes of the voters? If the states open their economies too quickly, and that is clearly one of the balancing acts that the president is having to play at this time.
Right. Just a follow-up question to that. So how is the situation in the United States as of now? Are people following stay-at-home orders, or are they really keen to step out to carry on with normal life, though the pandemic shows no signs of abating in the U.S.?
I think there is a definite sense of lockdown fatigue in many parts of the country. I think you saw in California last weekend, the governor there had to close down the beaches because there were just too many people there, and he was furious at the sight of the number of people out and about when this stay-at-home order has been issued. So, and this is a similar story across a lot of the country. This is one of the things that's fueling these protests, and a lot of protesters, they come out, they're not wearing masks, they're not maintaining the mandatory the guidelines of keeping a distance 6 feet away from other people. So it's very difficult to say exactly where, pinpointing exactly where the mood is. But there are a lot of people, as these polls, as this one particular poll has shown, an NBC poll has shown that there are people who are more concerned about the country reopening too quickly. And this is something that governors across the country are also concerned about. They want to make sure that they can keep the deaths down. You look at what Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York State has said, and he's issued these guidelines talking about a decline in cases for 14 days, a decline in deaths over a period of time. Only then will they consider relaxing these lockdown measures.
All right, Jagriti, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for all your inputs. And now let's move on to our next story. Reiterating America's position on China, the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo backed U.S. President Donald Trump's assertion that the coronavirus had in fact originated in a research lab in Wuhan. The Chinese state broadcaster CCTV hit back fiercely, calling Pompeo, and I quote, insane. Mike Pompeo's quote-unquote insane and evasive remarks became a hot topic on state broadcaster CCTV on Monday. Pompeo, a day earlier, had said that there was enormous evidence that the virus had originated in a lab in China. Various scientific experts and the World Health Organization have as yet denied the claim. The harshly worded commentary cited WHO Executive Director Mike Ryan and Columbia University virologist W. Ian Lipkin, who claimed that the virus was natural in origin. The commentary goes on to say that these flawed and unreasonable remarks by American politicians make it clear to that no evidence exists. The program further says that the so-called virus leak hype is a complete and utter lie. American politicians are rushing to shift the blame, cheat voters and suppress China when their own domestic anti-epidemic efforts are a mess. And it wasn't just the state broadcaster that took on the aggressive tone. Further, 2 opinion pieces published on Monday by state newspaper People's Daily attacked Mike Pompeo and former White House strategist Steve Bannon. In the past week, Chinese media has repeatedly slammed Mike Pompeo as the common enemy of mankind, and Pompeo has been personally accused of spreading a political virus over his repeated claims that the pandemic originated in a lab in China. Now, what escalated this war of words was arguably when the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian pushed the conspiracy theory that the US military had brought the virus to China.